is Rich Larson, and I want to welcome you to the January edition to the IIBA certification chat. We'll get started with your questions as soon as you submit them. There are a couple in there in the queue already, and if you haven't got a chance yet to try out the GoToWebinar toolbar, please do so now and send me in either your name and location, or else just start sending your questions because we will get going with them. So first of all, Yasser, hello. You said you're an Egyptian located in Saudi Arabia. You're a pharmacist and working in as a BI project manager. Excellent, Yasser. You got a couple questions in the queue already, so let me take them one at a time. You're asking first. Your exam is next Monday. We all wish you a lot of success from our virtual locations around the world. And you have a weekend that loves to study, aren't you lucky? You want to ask about the difference between validate requirements and trace requirements. He says, as I think both are related to alignment. You're absolutely right. And really, I took a quick peek at the BABOK to remind myself, they are very much related, because when you think about validate requirements, what you're doing with those is making sure they align to business requirements. And I also think, therefore, to business need. I think of a business requirement much the same as a business need, only business need is probably more generic. Validate requirements make sure every requirement ties back to and aligns to those business requirements. And so does traceability. I think traceability aligns, but traceability actually can go both directions. That's one of the key differences. You can trace back to those business requirements and therefore to the business need, but you can also trace back from one requirement to another and forwards from one requirement to, say, a design, to a test, to a finished component, or what have you. So key difference, validate's kind of broader, making sure that all requirements fulfill business needs, and trace can go backwards and forwards, and probably more at a granular level as well. So hopefully that answers your question. And I also want to encourage you, if I give an answer that's not quite on the mark for what you're looking for, or you just want to explore the issue further, please send me in a follow-up question. I think it's a good way to have a dialogue. And part of the reason we do the written questions is to, eliminate people's nervousness on a call, or to reduce everything just to written English language. I think generally works better. Yasser also asked another question that I think is a good discussion point for us about the difference between elicitation results and BA information. They are much the same. If you look at the BABOK, when you elicit something, it could be business information in a broad sense. I think of business information as kind of a super type, if that word makes sense to you. It's a higher level of abstraction under which elicitation results might be one of the things. And I always associate elicitation results perhaps more with requirements and design type of thing, but it could be anything about any aspect of our project, such as stakeholders' concerns, or risks, or transition type constraints, and anything like that. So business analysis information is a broader thing in my mind, and elicitation results are more specific. They're very related though, because if you look at the BABOK, when you communicate business analysis information, it could be anything, including elicitation results. Yasser, I hope that helps clarify it just a little bit more from what's in the BABOK. Kevin, hey, welcome, Kevin. You're taking BA training courses through an improved institution starting end of this month, ending in May. Great. In relation to the timeline, when is the appropriate time to apply on the IIBA site for my CCBA certification, and to take the exam? Okay, so first of all, you should get started with the application now. I'd say that because it'll generally take longer than you think. Some people finish it very quickly within, I don't think days, but certainly weeks. Other times it can drag out, and largely it drags out because of two things. One, your references need to get back to IIBA and to attest to your experience as a BA. So that's the first thing we always recommend is get those references going. Find 2 people, whether they are a customer of yours, secondly, a career manager, or thirdly, a CBAP that can attest to your BA experience, and get them going. The other thing that can take longer than you think is gathering all your work history. Depending on the projects you've done and how many smaller ones you've done and how many you have to get listed, that will be a longer thing than you think. So start that application now. I'll get back to your training in just a second, but I want to urge you all, and you're going to get a copy of these slides. Actually, the slides are posted to the GoToWebinar panel. Whoops, get back here. Yeah, get back here. I better stop this animation from going. You can download those. There's a PDF sitting waiting for you right now. So I'd urge you to download these slides, and then you can use these links. So one of the links here is there's a CBAP CCBA application worksheet that you can download from our website. That'll help you organize your work history. So both of those things take some time. Now, as far as secondly, besides applying, you want to take the exam. We usually suggest that you take the exam within 90 days of any training class. The closer you take it to the class, the better, because like any study or knowledge-based activity, if you don't start using that information within a previous or a certain time, the fallout of what you've studied dramatically goes down. In fact, I always like to tell people the day after you take your exam, you're going to forget half of what you studied. And that's not an insult or that's just reality. And so 90 days is probably the most, somewhere in that amount of time, because we always recommend about 100 hours of study time on average, including, let's say you take a 35-hour boot camp like ours is. That reduces that amount of studying to then 65 hours after class. So how long can you study per day or per week? And then plan out how many weeks after you take your class can you then realistically take your exam. Etune, I think I pronounced your name, from Calgary. We have 2 Canadian people on the call today. Yeah, welcome. It's 6 below Celsius, not so bad as Ottawa, huh? Okay, now Teresa, hello from Oklahoma. Sun is shining, 38 degrees, which is kind of cool for Oklahoma, but still better than 35 below. You have a PMP and you said PBI. Did you mean PBA certification? Will projects, tasks apply to IIBA certifications? Absolutely, they will. What applies the most for CBAP are I shouldn't say the most. The only thing that qualifies would be the hours you spent doing business analysis activities. Doesn't mean your job title had to be a BA, but let me give you an example. Let's say you are doing project planning for your project. You've done some work. I assume you're a PMP, you've done some planning. Anything related to business analysis planning will count. Anything related to general project risks or budget or time planning, anything like that, will not count. So absolutely. Again, our spreadsheet, if you download that, will help you organize those hours, and you can apply kind of a percentage of time that you spent working on BA activities, project by project, and really make it easy, we feel. So your second part of your question, will these PMI certifications apply towards IIBA certifications? Well, they'll help you. I don't know what you mean exactly by apply, but having those in hand, you've taken some complex, difficult exams. I think that it would become easier then to take an exam, because a lot of reason people will fail an exam is because of test anxiety. Maybe you haven't taken a major exam for a long time, maybe since college. And so there's a lot of stress going into the exam booth, and some people are better test takers than others. I admit to being one of them, a good test taker, but that still doesn't shorten your study in my mind if you're a good test taker. But I don't want to get you worried if you're not a good test taker. I think what I'm trying to say here is that having taken the major exams, that's going to help you. And if you haven't taken exams for a while, an exam simulator will help you get over that test anxiety. I think, because you get in the mode of answering questions online in kind of an artificial environment. And much like the exam that you'll have to take come the day that you then have to do it. So thank you for your compliment. You used our prep for PBA, and it was extremely helpful. We're glad. We'd like to think our CBAP is just as helpful. So there you have it. Now, let's see. Kelly is saying, hello, and by obtaining a CBAP, how much more would that add to your yearly salary? Well, the only study I've seen estimates you have like about a 10% increase in salary for getting your CBAP, which isn't a lot. It's a little. It's helpful. It's kind of like, okay, and one more reason to get it. It shouldn't be the only reason. I think having the CBAP will demonstrate to your company and your management that you are dedicated to the business analysis profession. And I always like to bring up an example of a panel that I attended or watched. I wasn't on it, but I watched a group of CIOs at a BA conference. And what they said kind of stood out to me, and that is that having any professional certification like the CBAP or the PMP demonstrates that you are committed to your profession. And that will put you in line for promotions, which will help you lead to more pay. And that's hard to measure. Whether, if you get promoted, will that be attributable to your CBAP or not? So I don't know about the salary surveys, whether they can even measure that, but I think that's, in my intuitive sense, helpful for you from that standpoint. Plus, if you go looking for another job, having the CBAP will only help your credentials. Now, interesting enough, your new prospective employer may not even know what the CBAP is. I've heard that from many people. So here's your chance to then explain what that is. And by doing so, you can then launch into a discussion about how it demonstrates your commitment to the profession. And last point I want to make, studying for any professional certification is a great learning experience. Boy, I learned a ton about project management when I got my PMP, because that was not something I was as good or confident as I was compared to business analysis. I just learned a lot about project management from studying for my PMP, and I feel much more confident about it now. So there you have a couple of things. Yasser is saying, what if you fail in your first attempt? Well, my first thought is don't panic or feel like you're alone. Some people do, whether it's because you are nervous or anxious, or maybe didn't prepare enough. Did you study those 100 hours like I'm suggesting? Any number of reasons could cause you to fail. And we have an article on our website. If I scroll back here to this page on our site, we have a lot of resources. If you go to this link here, let me see if I can get this highlighter to work. This watermarklearning.com/CBAP-resources. If you go there, not only can you find the application worksheet I was talking about, it's in a couple of places, but there's also an article called How to Pass the CBAP Exam the Second Time. We compile that article based on discussions and advice and coaching and learning from people who did not fail and asking them questions about what they knew or didn't know. And we compile this list of 12 different things. Probably the number one reason people don't fail, besides that test anxiety, mind you, is just simply not understanding the BA body of knowledge enough. The BABAC is the basis for the exam, and you really need to understand that to be able to answer the questions that you get thrown at on the exam. So try it again, and I encourage you to resubmit your application. And well, actually, the application doesn't have to be resubmitted. You're good for a year. Is to schedule another exam and do it within, say, 90 days or less of your first one, because the sooner you retake the exam, the better. And so all those things, I don't have any statistics, but I have kind of a real gut level feeling that people who don't pass the first time will pass the second time in large numbers. Okay, so Yasser saying, I have difficulty in memorizing, and you're not alone, Yasser, with that. Some parts like guidelines and tools. I don't think you need to memorize everything. In some of our study materials, we've invented mnemonics to help you. That's probably one thing that you could try, because it will help you gain confidence. And we always suggest that you do a brain dump at the beginning of an exam. Now, that's been made more difficult. You know what a brain dump is? It's like listing out some key things that you've memorized at the start of an exam. And it's more difficult now today because you generally are given just a whiteboard and a marker, so that you don't have the same kind of wherewithal to jot down things as when I took both my PMP and my CBAP. Anyway, you can still write down some key things. So imagine a 8.5 by 11 whiteboard, how much you can fit on there, and choose some key things that you want to try to memorize, starting with maybe the knowledge areas and perhaps the tasks that you were struggling with the most when you studied. And besides the help in memorizing things, what a brain dump will do is at the start of your exam help build your confidence. And I think starting off an exam by putting things down will kind of get your brain kicked into gear, get yourself in a positive state of mind. And I know it sounds corny, but I always advise people to do this. At the top of your whiteboard, write, I will pass my CBAP or CCBA or whatever exam you're taking exam. And that studies have shown that improves people's ability to pass their exam, because it increases your confidence and reduces anxiety. Atune is saying, I think the big challenge for me is filling out the BA project hours. Yeah, how do I get that going? I urge you to get the spreadsheet and download that to take a look at it. I don't know, it's been a while since I've tried this, so let me see if I can go here and do it while in the middle of our, here we go. So if you log in, or become a member of our learning network, you can download the document. So let's see, I'm downloading it now, and I get the spreadsheet here. Starts a fairly generic Excel spreadsheet with some information on the first tab. Second tab is a summary of your activities. You plug it in here, and you put down how many hours you've done in project by project. So A, B, C, those are projects. And you put in the number of hours here by knowledge area. And we got abbreviations for the different knowledge areas, as you can see. And then it will calculate that for you. Okay, so then you can look down here on the bottom to see your totals. And so again, to tune, you would have to go back in your mind and estimate how much time did you spend doing BA activities on each project. Nobody from IIBA expects you to have a perfect memory or recall or even records. In fact, I always like to tell the story that one of my CBAP students said she was a pack rat and she kept the last 20 years of project records, all of her timesheets for all of her projects going back 20 years. And she started going through them all. And she said she finally gave up because it was just too intense of an effort and too many headaches trying to compile all the projects. So she just estimated anyway. And she was approved and she got her CBAP. And so you don't need to have an exact number or recollection. So our spreadsheet, I think, makes it easy for you to plug in your estimates. All right, so now let's move on. Let's see, next question. Do it in my PMP, yes, sir. I will pass, yeah, I will pass my CBAP. If you write down nothing but that on your whiteboard, Yasser and everyone else, when you take your exam, that's going to help you, I do think. Gautami, hello. Did you just say that we are given a whiteboard and marker while taking an exam? Yes, you are. Yeah, that's about all the exam centers allow you to do these days. So that, generally speaking, You can make notes sort of on the exam interface by marking questions and going back to them to review them later. And we have that on our exam simulator as well. We have that ability to flag a question. So many people find that very helpful. You can also, I believe, for CBAP, mark answers to questions that you know are flat out wrong. So you can kind of eliminate them from even thinking about them. I did that on my paper when I was given a paper and pencil to do that with. And I would go A, B, C, D, and B is wrong and D is wrong. So I'm left with A and C, and that's helpful to focus yourself. But you could still do that on a whiteboard too. One thing more too about the exam center is that you can't take anything into the exam booth that would be construed to be like a recording device. So any jewelry, by and large, I think you might have to take off watches. Don't quote me, but anything like that, the exam center might ask you to take off. So be prepared for that and wear minimal jewelry to the center. There is a locker for you to put your stuff in, but you also can't take food or drink into the exam center, I'm pretty sure, but you could leave that in your locker too. So I always advise people to take a break at least once during your exam to get up and stretch around and move and hydrate to keep your brain functioning. And probably you need a bathroom break inside of a 3.5 hour exam. Hi, Cindy. So you're asking, how is the CBAP exam graded? Generally speaking, it's graded with kind of a point system. And I don't know, and they don't reveal how many points per question, but I do believe like the harder questions, they may give you more points. And then if you get the question correct, you get that many points. And if you get the question wrong, you lose that number of points. If you don't answer a question, you automatically get 0 points. So I want to make sure that you answer all your questions when you take your exam. Let's say you got about 10 questions that you really don't have a solid idea of the answer to. As maybe you mark them, which I always advise. So when the time is ticking down, when you're ready to end your exam, go back through those 10 questions as an example and give your best educated guess. If you really don't have any idea, just put down anything. Seriously. I mean, you have a 1 in 4 chance of getting it right. So that's just sort of a practical bit of advice that it won't hurt you to guess wrong. They don't penalize you for incorrect answers. They kind of penalize you for no answer because you get 0 points. So hope that answers your question. So there's a certain threshold you have to get, and everybody estimates it's around 70% to pass. And so in our exam simulator, we always recommend that you get at least that, probably more like 80% on a consistent basis to get ready for your exam. Yasser is asking, is there any question related to financial analysis? We've heard that there are calculation questions on the CBAP. And I can't remember, are you CBAP or CCBA, Yasser? You don't, to my knowledge, have to calculate net present value, or so those things are really nasty calculations. And in an exam booth, it would be extremely unfair of them. And I don't think they're extremely unfair at IIBA. But there are calculation questions, so be prepared to do some calculation work. And I'm pretty sure they give you a calculator that you can use online. But the simple financial analysis, you might have to do some questioning, but nothing very complicated. All right. Guatami says, wow, I did not know about this. Thanks for telling us. Good, okay. Balaji, hello. Is the Watermark simulator, how many question papers do we have? Well, we don't do it by paper. You have really an unlimited number of simulations. What we do is we randomly draw from our exam bank every time you do a simulation, or a drill for that matter. We have these drills that I think are very helpful, knowledge area by knowledge area. You can get 20 or 25 questions, whatever, depending on the knowledge area. And it's really unlimited. You will start seeing repeats because we have 1,200 questions in our exam bank, and you're going to start seeing repeating if you do a certain number of them. But we keep track of which questions you've answered. So we try to minimize when you see the repeats until after several exams. So if you space it out at any amount, they'll seem fresh to you. So there's really an unlimited number of exams you can take in our simulator. But Tommy's asking, which one would you consider most helpful for a BA, CBAP or PBA? Is one over the other or both helpful? I think first of all, they're both helpful. They're most helpful for people who have either both project management and business analysis experience. Let me clarify. The PBA is most helpful for that. I got off on the wrong foot there. So if you have a blend of PM and BA experience, the first one I would consider would be the PBA. If you're mostly or all business analysis, definitely start with the CBAP. I think having both has some amount of practicality. I know there's some cost to having both, but if you're certainly a trainer like I am or a consultant like some of you are, having both would be helpful. If you already have a PMP, having the PBA makes some sense because from a reporting standpoint, and that's just a purely practical thing, and that's important too. PMI's got a broader name recognition certainly than IIBA, but certainly there are more CBAPs in the world right now than PBAs, so who knows what the future is going to bring. I don't have a crystal ball, so hopefully that's helpful. Be sure to fire back any follow-up questions too as you have them. Balaji says, how much should I score in the simulator to assess myself to attempt the CBAP? I think minimally 70, but 80% or more to be safe. And you can look at the results. We give you a percentage overall score that you have obtained on your exams to see your readiness. Now you can even eliminate some of your early exams from our simulator so that it doesn't factor into the average, because early on you're probably going to score really low, so it drags your average down. So you can eliminate all but the last few things to get a sense of how you're doing, and we really think that that's a good feedback indicator. So another thing I always stress is if you're not scoring well on any particular knowledge area, then go back into the BABAC and reread the entire knowledge area, do some drills, look at your scores, and repeat that until you can get those numbers up to the 70 to 80% level. Atune says, how different is the new CBAP exam compared to the previous one? It's different in a couple of respects. Number one is that 30 to 40% of the questions are case study based. They're long, like 1 to 1.5 page case studies, anywhere from 400 to 700 words. And then you're asked 3 to 5 questions based on that case study. That's a big departure from before. Another 30 to 40% of the exam is based on situations. And you're given a more brief scenario, like a paragraph or so, and then asked maybe 2 to 4 questions based on that. That was in version 2. So they've kept those. They've reduced then the number, of just plain knowledge-based questions to the remaining 20 or so percent, 20 to 30. And so you have far fewer of those and a whole bunch of case study-based questions. Those are some of the big differences off the top of my head. Teresa is saying, I use the Watermark simulator for PBA certification prep. It was very helpful. It helps you know where to go back and do more study. Thanks, I'm glad to hear that. My scores in the simulator were very similar to the PBA certification test scores. That's excellent to know, Teresa. Thank you very much for that. It's always good to get feedback on how we're doing and how we're helping people. So I'm glad it helped you with that. And we expect the CBAP works the same because we've been actually doing that a lot longer. It's been around longer. And so that's good. Now we're near at the bottom of the hour, which is what the scheduled amount of time was, usually about all the time we need. However, I'm willing to stay on and answer any last questions. If you have to leave now because you got a meeting to go to or whatever, we will be posting the recording of this on our website so that you can tune into any last questions that you might have missed. So if you have last questions, please fire away. I can answer them right now, and we can end up the session with your last questions that are still in your mind based on maybe things you heard or things left over in your mind that are still not quite clear. As I suggested to Yasser, I want to wish best wishes on passing your exam. I'm kind of superstitious that way. I don't ever say good luck because I don't want to jinx anybody. Let's see. One thing too, you're going to get a discount code for further certification resources like these showing on the slide, and they're available to anybody who registered for this chat. So we are quite proud of our products, and I'm very happy that it's helped people in their certification efforts and journeys and dreams. So we also want to encourage you, let us know how it's going. After you take your exam, shoot us an email or post social media or go to LinkedIn and tell the world that you passed. And of course, if you want to give us some kudos, we are always helpful up for that too. So don't forget Amazon reviews of our study guide if that's helped you. I don't see any more questions coming in, so I'm going to call it a day. I want to thank you very much for attending. And like I said, best wishes on your own certification journey. And we'll be back here next month for another edition of this chat. So if you haven't taken your exam, or Yasser, if you want to join us next month to tell us how it's gone, we'd love to hear from you. So again, have a great weekend, everybody, and happy studying. Bye-bye now.